Hello, it's Man and Markets. Welcome to the show. I am Charles Boji, your host. Now, Uganda's debt has already reached worrying levels. We're talking about over 60 trillion shillings in debt. Now, what is more worrying is the rate at which it's accumulating. And of course, experts are worried that it's about to breach, the debt to GDP ratio percentage that is allowable by international practice. That is the 50% threshold. But we'll be discussing that a little more in our subsequent shows. It's Man and Markets once again. Welcome to the show. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on the economy. Now, its ripple is being felt right from the business side to the household level. So today we're trying to look at how deep this goes and what can be done to actually get the economy back to functional and working.
Financial Sector Deepening Uganda is a premier think tank in Uganda. We are here to provide evidence base for policymakers and regulators, and we also give catalytic grants to the financial sector and financial institutions so that they can serve the underserved, especially women, smallholder farmers, and youth. On our COVID-19 series, it is part of our efforts to make sure that there is more data-based and evidence-based decision-making in helping all institutions and regulators navigate the crisis. As part of this effort, what we have done is we first conducted an analysis of where people and businesses were before COVID. During 2020, we collected 5 points of data between April to September 2020 and tried to, via phone-based surveys, and tried to understand what changed, how are they coping, what about their livelihoods, how are they dealing with COVID. And the 3 big takeaways were, number 1, there was a significant impact on households and businesses in terms of their livelihoods and take-home income. So while in April, a majority of the people, because of the lockdown, reported that they've been laid off or they're not receiving an income, by September, majority of the people said that they've been able to find some jobs. But a significant majority of our respondents, about 73%, said that the income that they were taking I wouldn't call it perfect forecasting, but we used all the data sets to say, where is this leaving the vulnerable population? Who is going to be worse off and who is going to be better off? And we discovered that we estimate about 1.8 million very small businesses across Uganda will not reach the same levels of income or buffers in savings that they had in 2019 until 2023. So that's a big number, and majority of these are women-dominated businesses, whether they are cross-border traders or women who are selling vegetables and small clothes, etc. Those are the big takeaways from these findings. And as FSD Uganda, we hope that we can work with the central bank, all regulators, the Ministry of Finance, and the financial industry to bridge this gap and help the economy recover. There are a couple of things that we need to know. One is that when the pandemic hit, banks became risk averse because they don't know how this is going to shape, how long this is going to continue, what is the impact on businesses. Even businesses started becoming cash conservative. So they started leaving money in the banks. And banks additionally did not know when Rashmi or Charles will draw down on their savings. So there was a contraction of credit in the economy because they don't know when, if you are going to be laid off, if I'm going to be laid off, and whether I start drawing down on my savings. So that liability of assets versus that mismatch they wanted to match. And so you will find that majority of the banks worldwide are sitting on some of the largest deposits, which seems ironical, but it is just a phenomena of everybody suddenly becoming very risk averse, including clients and businesses becoming risk averse. So if you had expansion plans as a construction company, maybe this is not the right time. So if we had to put ourselves in the shoes of a bank, when there is so much uncertainty, so much unpredictability, you are going to do a couple of things. One, you will try to make sure that if you lend to people you know really well. You have all the information, you have a good experience with them typically, so they have already been served before, or you have enough collateral and you can protect your assets. So what that then does is that you are not lending new money to businesses. You're not helping this necessarily, you're not in the position to help businesses grow at this point in time. Additionally, central banks worldwide are also trying to be more prudential in their approach. They're asking banks to make sure that they have enough buffers to protect against any shock that might come. For example, in Uganda, the waiver, the moratoria that the central bank gave ends in September 2021. After that, there is no more moratoria. So all the banks will then have to come together and say, all right, where are we today as of September? What is our NPLs looking like? And we were able to, in an accounting term, not factor that in for this fiscal year, but come September we will know, because trillions worth of loans were restructured. And how many are all of them going to be perfect? Probably not. So we will have a better understanding of the impact of COVID on the financial sector come September. We were hoping that there would be a stimulus package in the economy, because you do need, as you said, you need an injection, you need to oxygenate the economy. The government's AMYOGA program has promise, but there needs to be more. For example, a majority of small businesses don't do their regular financial transactions with banks. They actually do it with what we call the Tier 4 sector, so microfinance institutions, SACCOs, etc. And they didn't receive that kind of support that the deposit-taking sector received. So even with the Microfinance Support Center, UDB, and even other development actors and donors, there needs to be a discussion on how are we setting up funds for MSME relief. We have heard about Stanbic. We know other partners are discussing that. So the Stanbic has its economic restart facility. Other banks are also trying to support the Tier 4 sector, but more needs to be done. Especially with development actors coming together and saying, can we work with the government possibly for the most vulnerable to have a loan forgiveness program? For example, how do we target and identify who is the most vulnerable? Because that is the first question. You don't want to give money to people who don't deserve it. But that requires effort and deliberate intention of saying, how do we do that? And how can we help, or can we give concessional financing? And can we increase the tenor of repayment to show some flexibility so that people can first recuperate and then start repaying?
One of the most liquid institutions in this country is the National Social Security Fund. A fund that controls almost 10% of the country's GDP is really quite important in driving growth in certain sections of the economy. So today we try to find out the strategies that the fund is trying to do to ensure that it extends its impact to different sectors of the economy. The story of Uganda's swelling debt has left a bad taste in the mouths of many, with some warning of a possibility of it reaching unsustainable levels. At over 60 trillion shillings, Uganda's debt is edging closer to breaching the 50% debt to GDP ratio ceiling that the country has set itself as a no-go area. This is now making the experts worry of the impending loan servicing deficit threat the country faces. In such an environment, reprieve to resuscitate the already depressed economy is viewed to come from internal sources as opposed to accumulating more external debt. To this end, institutions like the National Social Security Fund are being keenly looked at as major funding growth sources, a task they seem to be raising too.
These are the projects we are going to run this particular year. Those of you who are interested in doing business with us, spot where the money is. So overall, we are hoping to spend about 826 billion shillings in this coming financial year, which starts in July. We will spend 779 million shillings in real estate projects. We're going to spend almost 40 billion shillings in IT and computer equipment. We're going to spend about 7 billion shillings in motor vehicles, about 1 billion shillings in office equipment, and 500 million shillings in furniture and fittings.
Playing in the space of NSSF as a supplier, like many other entities that fall in its size segment, however, demand for more service suppliers. This is also found by the available statistics that show a sharp fall in the contribution of traditional sectors, such as agriculture, to the economy.
The agriculture sector is unfortunately declining at a very high rate. It contributes a quarter to GDP, so it is not the one that is contributing to our growth. It is unfortunately the service sector, which is contributing approximately 43% to GDP, and therefore if you are a supplier, you should be able to know where the bread and butter.
Many small and medium enterprises surviving as suppliers of medium to large companies, experts are now pushing for SMEs to build capacity to play in the services sector, more so now as they are trying to weather the COVID-19 storm.
So suppliers out there, come for it, come supply, but as I kept saying in my presentation, we don't want one-off transactions. We want a partnership that will last, a partnership that will give us value, a partnership that will give our members value, a partnership that will give you value as a supplier. Come join us on this journey.
So as Uganda struggles to emerge out of the slump it finds itself because of COVID, the feeling from pundits is that focus should not be on accumulating more external debt, but more on harnessing internal resources and business sources, plus improving the way local business operators conduct business.